Wi-Fi routers, cell towers, iPads, and cell phones all emit radio frequency radiation, low-level microwaves. Our current levels of exposure to pulsed microwaves is unprecedented, thousands of times higher than past generations have ever experienced naturally. The American Academy of Pediatrics cites research showing that children absorb up to 10 times more radiation than adults. They have more liquid in their brains. Every single research study, independent, that has looked at people who use cell phones for more than 10 years, for 30 minutes a day, has shown significantly increased brain tumors. And if they started as teens, the risk was up to 8 times. If 30 minutes a day directly to the brain is increasing brain tumors, then what will 6 hours a day of full-body exposure mean for our children? Dr. Samet, the World Health Organization chair of the EMF working group, stated, the 2B carcinogenic classification implies an assurance of safety that cannot be offered. A particular concern, given the prospect that most of our world's population will have a lifetime of exposure, an assurance of safety that cannot be offered. Dr. Kaplan's research shows damaged and dead brain cells in rats exposed to legal levels, and there are several of these studies. The chief of OBGYN at Yale is calling on pregnant women to reduce exposures because of this neurological damage. Neither the EPA nor the FDA has ever set safe levels. Common sense dictates that we minimize exposures to our children. We should not wait for dead bodies, like we did with asbestos and cigarettes. And as Dr. Cindy Russell states, the best approach is precautionary. Reduce the risk by reducing microwave radiation. Microwave emissions. It is our obligation as physicians and parents to protect our children. They are our future and our legacy. And I want to say that solutions exist, and it's the Ethernet. And I think that it's really important that MCPS take the time. I've written for the last 2 years and sent a lot of information, credible, peer-reviewed. I hope that you'll read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amiri.
I'm going to read an excerpt from a letter by autism expert Dr. Herbert to the LA School District. I'm a pediatric neurologist and neuroscientist on the faculty of Harvard Medical School and on staff at the Massachusetts General Hospital. I am board certified in neurology with special competency in child neurology and subspecialty certification in neurodevelopmental disorders. There are thousands of papers that have accumulated over decades and are now accumulating at an accelerating pace that document adverse health and neurological impacts of radio frequency radiation. Children are more vulnerable than adults, and children with chronic illnesses or neurodevelopmental disabilities are even more vulnerable. Current technologies were designed and promulgated without taking account of biological impacts other than thermal impacts. We now know that there are a large array of impacts that have nothing to do with the heating of tissue. The claim from Wi-Fi proponents that the only concern is thermal impacts is now definitively outdated scientifically. RF radiation from Wi-Fi and cell towers can exert a disorganizing effect on the ability to learn and remember, and can also be destabilizing to immune and metabolic function. This will make it harder for some children to learn, particularly those who are already having problems in the first place. Powerful industrial entities have a vested interest in leading the public to believe that radio frequency radiation, which we cannot see, taste, or touch, is harmless. But this is not true. Please do the right and precautionary thing for our children. I urge you to step back from your intention to go Wi-Fi in the LAUSD and instead opt for wired technologies. It will be easier for you to make healthier decisions now than to undo a misguided decision later. And I'm a parent of a PILE student, and I've just learned about this recently, and I really feel strongly that the board should address this.
Okay. So with Ms. Hepsi Bowman and Mr. Jerry Garson, please come to the table. Bowman?
I'm going to read, thank you, sorry. I'm going to read an excerpt from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine letter to the LA School District written in March of 2013. There is consistent emerging science that shows people, especially children, are affected by increasing exposure to wireless radiation. In September 2010, the Journal of American Society of Reproductive Medicine, Fertility and Sterility reported that only 4 hours of exposure to standard laptop using Wi-Fi caused DNA damage to human sperms. Adverse health effects from wireless radio frequency fields, such as learning disabilities, altered immune response, headaches, clearly exist and are well documented in the scientific literature. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine suggests strongly that you do not add the burden of public health by installing blanket wireless internet connection in the Los Angeles school. Hardwired internet connections are more safer, they are stronger and more secure. The Wi-Fi system in schools are typically hundreds of times more powerful than the home consumer system you may be familiar with. This is an unprecedented exposure with unknown outcome on the health and reproductive potential of a generation. Children who are required by law to attend schools are also required a higher level of protection than the general public. You may be directed by technology, potential that the science of human health effects on Wi-Fi is not yet certain. This uncertainty is not a reason to subject a generation of children to such extreme exposure. Rather, it is the foundation upon which caution must be exercised to prevent a potential public health problem.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I think we can all agree that school should be a safe, nurturing environment and that technology is important to our children's education. We should not and do not have to choose between the two. The new technology plan uses robust Wi-Fi, which impacts the health of our children. Wi-Fi may be omnipresent in today's world, but it was never tested for safety on children. Wi-Fi puts radiation in the air rather than through wires. By using Wi-Fi and laptops for every child, we are exposing children to radiation for the entire school day. No adequate regulations exist for long-term safety. How do I know this? The FCC guidelines in place are from 1996 and are currently being revised because of their irrelevance to today's world. Let me repeat, 1996. Do you remember using Wi-Fi in 1996? The regulations deal with thermal exposure, burning of the skin. The EPA has stated that we cannot rely on the guidelines to protect us, and they do not adequately treat non-thermal prolonged exposure. Who are we outsmarting by using outdated FCC guidelines from 1996 when it is children that will be harmed? And why are we doing so when there are safer ways to access technology? I'm not worried about my child's skin being burned from Wi-Fi, which is all these regulations protect us from. I'm worried about thousands of studies that have found evidence of harm due to exposures permitted by the current FCC guidelines, ranging from headaches, brain fog, lethargy, behavioral, neurological, and reproductive issues, to heart disturbances, leukemia, and other cancers. Yes, cancer. Wi-Fi is classified by the World Health Organization as a Class 2B carcinogen. Essentially what we have is an unregulated experiment on children's health. MCPS should listen to American Academy of Pediatrics. In a recent letter to the FCC, the AAP stated that the current FCC guidelines do not safeguard children and when revised need to account for the unique vulnerability of children and the exposure level today. I've received no response to my concerns and believe we can't ignore the science. We need to act and this deserves due diligence. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Scarato.